comes to emotional intelligence, we've identified several different levels of that, right? So here I put together an image that is going to help with understanding different layers and levels of emotional intelligence, right? So when it comes to social awareness, we're going to touch up a little bit. We're going to continue to talk about self-awareness and self-management. And I want to touch up a little bit on social awareness as it comes to empathy. Empathy is understood differently in different areas of life. Empathy, we have the ability to have empathy because our mirror neurons. So the more mirror neurons our brains deploys, the more empathy we will be able to have. Now, mirror neurons were developed by scientists many years ago when playing with monkeys. And they found out that the monkeys that were more empathetic, they would share their bananas, they would share their food. They had a large deployment of mirror neurons. But the thing of the mirror neurons are not the same as other neurotransmitters, because the mirror neurons, you develop more mirror neurons by developing your emotional intelligence. And intelligence has to do with knowledge, has to do with knowing what, how, when, and so on. But when it comes to emotional intelligence versus intellectual intelligence, EQ versus IQ, emotional intelligence is not something that is taught in school. It's not something that we are measured as children or young adults going to school. But it is something that we are measured when we are hired for a job, and there is something that we are measured when in a relationship. So the reason we get along or don't get along with people has something to do with the emotional intelligence. It's not just your personality. So your personality plays a role, which your personality will always adjust. It will complete, it will develop, it will evolve more with the more emotional intelligence you have. Your personality will follow with that. Then, of course, your physical body, your biological, has a lot to do with relationship and work and at home and personal relationship and so on. But social awareness, the extent to which people understand social awareness in the past few years is pretty much social media. And that is sad. It's sad. The social awareness is not limited to social media, right? And when it comes to empathy, a lot of people misunderstand the definition of empathy, and that is empathy and sympathy. Yeah, and a lot of people have an understanding that empathy means to feel what the other person is feeling, right? Especially if you go in the spiritual circles and higher consciousness circles, they would define empathy as feeling what the other person is feeling. But actually, that is sympathy. Sympathy, the brain goes into a sympathetic resonance with the people in front of you, and then you begin to feel their stuff, right? So it's good to keep in mind that empathy and sympathy are different. Because again, empathy, in empathy, is not sympathy. And empathy takes other people's feeling into thoughtful consideration. Through empathy, when you are empathetic, you will be very respectful towards the other and very thoughtful of what the other is going through. You know, are you going to step on your feet or not? Are you going to shut them down and not let them talk? Or you know, are you going to yell at them? Are you going to ignore them? Things like that. So it requires respect and thoughtfulness, right? And a certain amount of patience for different cultures, like Latin cultures or Eastern European cultures that I'm familiar with. But Daniel Goleman explains that our ability actually comes from these neurons that I talk about, the mirror neurons, that it's connected to the amygdala. And I've been talking about the amygdala for the past couple of months, have I not? The amygdala, the small little, the size of a not even a penny, it's so important. And then also, Daniel Goleman teaches us that you can read emotional intelligence on someone's face, their voice, and you can help direct them, on how to speak. But then when it comes to this, I'm just learning that there's so many neurological disorders that affect the strength of the muscles on people's faces. So they might have or age. It's just going to show up with a droopy face that it might give you an impression that someone is not happy when quite the opposite. It's happening. So keeping in mind that amygdala is extremely important, and amygdala responds to strong emotions, and strong emotions somehow we perceive strong fear to be a stronger emotion than happiness to be a stronger emotion, which is it isn't. So we want to. I think I might have settled something here with the echo. And we want to nurture our amygdala, if we can say it like this, with positive emotion, with happiness and laughter, and even being amazed or something that's very, very funny, and not watch as much TV that has a lot of anxiety to it, because that's going to affect our amygdala, right? And definitely keep in mind that empathy, it's not sympathy. So when we are feeling other people's stuff, we are actually in sympathetic resonance and not in empathetic resonance. When in empathy, someone might perceive that the other person might be a bit distant or not, but in fact, when someone is empathetic towards you, they will be there to help you. They will be there to assist you, right? So, anything you want to add to this, Randy?
No, that sounds good. The difference between empathy and sympathy.
All right. And so if we're happy with that, then I guess we can continue to talk about the self-management, the emotional self-control. And again, I cannot stress enough the amygdala part of the brain, that's how the purpose of the amygdala is to keep you safe. And if, for example, and some people that are extremely angry and commit a lot of crime, they might have a different emotional arousal, and their amygdala is affected as such that triggers them to act with violence. So, and then I remember I was at a presentation with a neuroendocrinologist, and it was many, many years ago. And I figured, well, now, take away the amygdala. And I said, well, no, you don't want to take the amygdala, because you take away the amygdala, then you're going to take away someone's capacity for self-defense. So anger would play a role in here, because anger will trigger the amygdala. But anger, it's not the bad guy. The bad guy is self-control, it's down-regulating, it's thoughtfulness, it's respect, it's emotional intelligence. this is what we want to pay attention, because we need anger to be capable to defend our life in a case of bad situation. And you never know when a bad situation arises, right? But what's happening lately, we are so overwhelmed. So we are not necessarily physically threatened, like, the war that's going on in Europe and Middle East, right? So right here in the US of A, we're not necessarily physically threatened for our amygdala to be triggered. So just knowing that, because we're so overwhelmed by a lot of things to do. I mean, we have to do so many things. There's no more time to rest. There's no more time to take a breath. So it's good to remember that in spite of being so overwhelmed by all the events and everything we need to do, we can still make a point to remember to self-regulate and down-regulate. Because we do have the capacity to manage our thoughts and manage our feelings. And of course, and days when we're going to do not such good job at it, but I'm not concerned with that. I don't think anybody's concerned with that. I mean, we should rather be concerned with our attention on managing those emotions the best we can, because we can control our response. We cannot control other people's response. And understanding that when we are overwhelmed with those feelings of frustration, that has something to do with the amygdala. And by knowing that purposely engaging in laughter and happiness and positive emotions purposefully, that will trigger the amygdala to not have a negative emotional response. So we can always choose fake laughter. The amygdala is not going to know that the laughter is fake. As long as you laugh, it's going to trigger your amygdala properly, and then level of frustration it's going to go down and down. And most people have difficulties with this by saying, "Oh, that's weird. I'm not going to do it because it's weird." Well, maybe it is something you're not used to doing, but who's going to see you? And take a moment in a quiet